What's up, everyone? Today is October 27th of 2022, and in today's video, we're going to talk about the United Kingdom and the installation of a new Prime Minister named Rishi Sunak, who took over for the embattled Liz Truss, who only lasted about 7 weeks in the role. In this video, we're going to talk about the ancient occulted language of Gematria, or Gematria, the ancient practice and observation of coding numbers into words, names, and phrases. This language, which rests underneath our alphabet, connects to dates on the calendar, as we will see over and over again through this video. Before I talk about Rishi Sunak and his numerology, I want to mention how on the very same day that he was elected as the new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, October 24th, in the news, famous Olympic swimmer Michael Phelps had announced the death of his father, Fred. This, again, making news on the exact same day as Sunak's election. Now, as the thumbnail on this video suggests, there's an odd resemblance between these two men, Michael Phelps and Rishi Sunak. Very different ethnicities, but similar looks nonetheless. And I find it interesting that we get this story from London, where Rishi Sunak will be headquartered. And this idea that they're breeding famous people for their roles in the public eye. And as we go, we'll also look at how this story connects to the numerology of San Francisco Mayor London Breed, who seems to be connected numerically to this as well. First, I want to quick recap the numerology of Liz Truss's resignation. Notice how, in the language of Gematria, Liz Truss has a reverse value of 72 and a reduction value of 36. The reverse order simply flips the alphabetic order around. The date that she announced her resignation as Prime Minister was on a date with numerology of both 72 and 36, which also left 72 days in the year. She was the leader of the Conservative Party, which also has Gematria of 72. And notice how the word resign equals 72 ordinal and 36 in both reduction methods. Similar numerology found in the date of Brexit as well, which Truss supported. Truss resigned during her 45th day in office, and notice how the word resigned has a Gematria value of 45 in both reduction methods once again. So this was a perfect example of how our mainstream media crafts major news stories by the numbers every single day. On her first day as Prime Minister, September 6th of 2022, Liz dressed in black and met the Queen 2 days before the Queen's death. The Queen died at the age of 96, which was reflected in the date of this meeting, September 6th, or 9/6. 96 is the ordinal value of the Reaper. In reverse Sumerian, even Grim Reaper has this value of 96. But there was a very significant alignment on that date connected to her full name, Mary Elizabeth Truss. The Queen also had the names Elizabeth and Mary in her birth name. In a very significant cipher called Latin Gematria, formerly called Jewish on this website, you'll see that Truss's full name sums to 1721. On the date of her meeting with the Queen, she was exactly 17,210 days old, lining up perfectly with her Gematria. However, the number 1721 is significant to the role of Prime Minister for another reason. The first ever Prime Minister in the history of the United Kingdom was Sir Robert Walpole, who took over as the first ever Prime Minister of Great Britain in the year 17 21. Walpole was the longest serving prime minister in the history of the position, whereas Liz Truss was the shortest in the entire history of the position. Now, Rishi Sunak is the 57th prime minister, and we'll talk at length about this number in a second. But first, back to this 1721, which was the number that was central to this ritual between the meeting of the prime minister and the queen. 1721 is what we call a prime number, divisible only by 1 and itself. And notice here how it's the 268th prime number. Well, if we measure between the birthdays of Rishi Sunak and Michael Phelps, who was not only in the news the same day, but also shares a similar face, notice how we get exactly 268 weeks between their births. Michael Phelps is heavily connected to Robert Walpole, this first Prime Minister of England. First of all, let's look at the name Walpole. Walpole comes from the words well and pole, which literally means a pool surrounded by a wall. Well, needless to say, Michael Phelps spent the majority of his career in a pool surrounded by a wall, swimming in the Olympics. Michael Phelps is the winningest Olympian of all time. And when he won his 19th medal, which broke the record held by a Soviet gymnast before him, he broke that record in London, England, the version of the Olympics that were introduced by the Queen. Notice how Sir Robert Walpole has the same reverse gematria as Michael Phelps, 224. In fact, Robert Walpole, 1st Earl of Orford, has an ordinal value of 335. Michael Phelps shares a full name with his father, Michael Fred Phelps. Well, Michael Fred Phelps II sums to 335 in the reverse alphabetic order. 335 is the satanic value of the moon in Gematria. Notice how the name Phelps also has the matching 283 Gematria with the moon. Michael Phelps was born under the astrological sign of Cancer, which is the only sign ruled by the moon. Furthermore, Cancer is a water sign, which again makes a lot of sense connected to this swimming athlete. But in regards to the moon, a very significant number for the moon is 57. The moon's maximum declination is 28.5 degrees from the plane of the sun. And if you add 28.5 to 28.5, you get a sum of 57, the total range of the moon's declination. Using the alphabetic order, the word moon sums to 57. And if you measure between the birthdays of Rishi Sunak and Michael Phelps, it's exactly 5 years and 7 weeks. As I mentioned before, Sunak is the 57th Prime Minister in the history of the United Kingdom. And he's headquartered in England. England equals 57. 57 is also the ancient Hebrew gematria of the word eclipse. Also consider how Michael Phelps has won the most gold medals in Olympic history. Golds equals 57. In fact, in my last super stream, I talked about the death of the founder of Gold's Gym. And I'm now realizing that that story is probably connected to what we're seeing here with Michael Phelps and Rishi Sunak. The founder of Gold's Gym, or the owner of Gold's Gym, died 57 years and 57 days after Gold's was founded. Gold's equals 57. Next, we're going to talk about why Sunak was installed as the new British Prime Minister on the same date as a solar eclipse, October 25th of 2022, the second eclipse of the year 2022, and the same date that Sunak became the new Prime Minister. Well, first, I want to look at the gematria of Prime Minister Robert Walpole, who was, again, the first man to ever hold this position. Notice how his name sums to 330, 1920, and 156. We'll talk about this 156 in a little bit. But consider the number 33. 33 equals 156 and 141, the same two numbers. The word eclipse equals 33. Also 192 in Latin gematria. 330 and 192, just like the values of Prime Minister Robert Walpole. The word eclipse in ordinal sums to 69. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, installed on the date of an eclipse, sums to 69 in reverse reduction. Eclipses always occur 1, 5, or 6 lunar phases after the last one. In ancient Hebrew, the word eclipse sums to 156. I pointed out how Prime Minister Robert Walpole sums to 156, just like 33. In Latin, the name Walpole equals 1056. On the date he took office, Rishi Sunak was a span of 15,506 days old, like the digits 156. If you measure from the date that Robert Walpole became the first prime minister to the date that Liz Truss met the Queen when she became prime minister, it was even 156 days apart on the calendar. With all this talk about London and unrelated people looking very much alike, this brings us to this San Francisco mayor whose name is London Breed. I've talked about her in the past. But just this name is so interesting, and she was the 45th mayor. Remember, Liz Truss resigned in her 45th day in the role? Well, if you measure from the date that she took office as mayor of San Francisco, notice how it was 1,566 days before the election of Rishi Sunak. Now, this number is connected to the eclipse code in another way. The 156th prime number is 911. This is the emergency dialing code here in the United States, and also the date of the biggest terror attack on American soil. Well, in Greek isopsephy, total eclipse sums to 911. And Greek is the language from which Latin was derived. And then, of course, Latin gave us the English alphabet, which is why these ciphers are particularly significant. Well, 911 in Latin gematria is the value of ancient and accepted Scottish rite of Freemasonry. Notice how we get a 1911. Now, Rishi Sunak is the first non-Caucasian to hold the role of British Prime Minister. And this reminded me of Sadiq Khan, who is the first non-white person to hold the role of London mayor. Now, granted, this is only a role that's occurred since 2000. I think he's only the third mayor of London, but still the first not to be white. And check out how old Sadiq Khan was on the date that Sunak took over, 19,011 days. Sunak even has primary birth numerology of 116, which is an upside-down 911. And on the date that Michael Phelps announced his father's death, he was 116 days after his birthday. Just some quick fun numerology with Sadiq Khan. He was inaugurated as mayor on May 9th, or 5-9. The name Sadiq Aman Khan equals 59 with the S exception. London, England equals 59. And the name Khan also equals 59 in Latin. Now, as far as why Freemasonry numbers are important, it's Freemasonry whose numerology is central to the eclipse code. Also, notice how the name Walpole sums to 105, 84, and 33, just like Masonry. In fact, Scottish Rite of Freemasonry has the same trigonal value as Robert Walpole, 1st Earl of Orford, 2814. In the standard alphabetic order, Scottish Rite of Freemasonry equals 325. And Rishi Sunak was sworn in 325 days after the last total eclipse. The number 325 was also mentioned in my last super stream. Coach Bill Belichick was trying to get his 325th win, which would make him second all-time. He would have passed George Halas, who was the founder of the Bears, which happened to be the team that the Patriots were playing in that game. On Monday Night Football, they gave us this 324 graphic. And notice how they put these Masonic pillars on either side in the game where Belichick was trying to get his 325th win. Again, this is all because Scottish Rite of Freemasonry equals 325. All right, so let's talk about this riddle with the Olympics again. So we go to Queen Elizabeth, who again led the opening ceremonies for the 2012 London Olympics. Well, if you measure from the date of the opening ceremonies to the date that Sunak was elected and Phelps announced his dad's death, it was 10 years and 89 days. And this stood out because swimmer equals 189. On top of that, London breed sums to 189. And is it London where they're breeding these athletes and politicians? Seems like it's possible. London breed's full name is London Nicole breed, which sums to 166. And measuring from the birthday of Rishi Sunak to the date that he became prime minister was 166 days. And how nice of Wikipedia to update Sunak's photo while I'm doing this video. What a great smile this guy has. Great hair. Got that little wave on top. I'm kind of digging it, you know? It's why I chose this picture for Michael Phelps. Because he's kind of got this wavy look to his hair. I mean, if you don't have a sense of humor about this, I'd like to think you should try to build one. Another look at London breed, though. Her birth numerology stood out to me as well because her birthday has primary numerology of 112, and she was born on the 223rd day of the year. And notice how Olympics equals 112, and then 223 in the capital letter cipher. I don't know, maybe that's a coincidence. But there's a couple alignments here that I don't think are coincidence. First off, the name Robert Walpole on its own gives us 162, and Rishi Sunak was born in Southampton. Notice how Southampton equals 162. Well, when Sunak was elected, he had to be appointed yet by King Charles, and his election occurred when King Charles was 27,007 days old. Now, in numerology, this represents the number 277. Well, measuring from the death of Robert Walpole to the date that he was sworn in was 277 years, 7 months, and 7 days. In fact, Robert Walpole's death was on March 18th, which is the 77th day of the year. And then we're measuring to the date that Sunak was sworn in, which had primary numerology of 77. It was also 47 days after the death of Queen Elizabeth. Elizabeth equals 47. So does Liz. Liz equals 47. And Liz Truss turned 47 just a month before she met the Queen at Balmoral Castle, where Elizabeth ultimately passed away. So a lot of strange things here, but do we even need the numbers? The fact that these two guys were in the media on the same day when they look so much alike, all connecting to Walpole, right? A pool surrounded by a wall. Crazy world we live in, truth seekers. But at least there's some order to it. It's always fascinating when you find it. Peace, love, God bless, and we'll talk to you next time. See ya.